Hello, everyone. If this is your first time joining us today, thank you so much for being here. Today, I am so delighted to introduce an amazing guest. She's a well known therapist. In fact, she's a licensed mental health clinician, mental health advocate, best selling author, and podcast host. So please help me welcome Celeste, the therapist, to the Defining You podcast. Welcome, Celeste. So
Thank
nice to
you.
have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful. Happy to be here.
Good to have you. I was literally looking for a Black therapist, and my niece immediately recommended you. And I see you refer to yourself as a dope Black therapist. I really like that. You want to talk about that a little
Thank
bit?
you. Well, so I'm 39. Dope was like really that word was popular when I was growing up, so I still use it. I don't know if kids, but I'm like, oh, that's so dope. I love it. Like dope means to me, it's like really it's really good. So I've been more mindful of like saying like yes, I'm a black therapist because there's not many black therapists around.
Absolutely. Well, I am really happy to have you here because we have so much happening in the world today, and we definitely need to have someone like you, especially speak directly to folks in the Black community. So, before we really get into the meat of things, can you please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so my name is actually Celeste Viciere, and I'm in private practice. I've been in private practice since 2015, and I've worked in all sectors of the mental health field. But right now, I work with adults, and I podcast and I speak, and I'm really big on educating people about mental health because I feel like it's one of the areas of life that affects all areas of our life, but it's
Mhm.
one of the more stigmatized areas of life that we don't grow up learning about.
Yes. So I always like to ask people because one of the things I do on the show is to helping our audience get over their fear and really step into themselves and really think about what they want to do and what they really love and really
Yeah.
embrace that. So I want to get into asking you why did you want to get into therapy?
Yeah, great question. I love the fact that I mean I love the whole concept of your podcast because the fear piece is the part that really separates us from where we are and where we want to be, honestly.
Yes. Hmm.
And a lot of it's internal. For
Hmm.
me personally, I kind of I say I fell into this job, but if I'm a spiritual person, I know nothing's by accident.
Hmm.
I was working at a shelter and I was working with primarily white men who were homeless. I've never been homeless, so I don't have any shared
Mm.
experiences. And they talked about how they were grateful for me listening to them. So I recognized that I had a gift to listen, and I really enjoyed listening
That is
and
so
talking to
important.
people. Yeah, talking to people, and then me struggling. I struggled with depression growing up. It was not something I named at 14 and 15 in the
Hmm.
moment, but looking back, I was very high functioning. It
Hmm.
wasn't something that you would see in the movies or the DSM of
Yeah.
being laid out in bed, especially black women, we just keep going. So it
Mm.
affected me physically. I went to therapy, and I was able
Nice.
to get a lot of support through that. So like, where I'm at today at 39 in 2022, 20 years ago, I would not have said I would be talking on your platform about mental health and
Mhm.
wellness because I thought it was a white person's thing. So,
Mm.
because of how much I've changed my mindset, I want people to know that it's available to them. So, that's why I do what I do.
Mhm. The key word you touch on, and I think we'll probably go deeper into that mindset.
Mhm.
So what do you think are the primary misconceptions that Black people tend to have about their own mental and emotional health?
A big part of it is we don't get to see a lot of people live a well, like a balanced, well life, right?
Hmm.
And if we do see them, they're stars on TV. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not people in our community. And our parents did the best that they could. They were survivors. And we live in a system. If you're in America, and obviously I know other countries are the same way, but in America we live in a system that wasn't designed for Black people to thrive.
Mm.
And when you're in an environment like that and you're not conditioning your mind, you're gonna get into alignment with society.
Mm.
Like I'm not like a Bible person, but one of the things, renewing your mind, is like being able to like sit with yourself, recognize what's going on, and being able to feed yourself spiritually the same way we feed ourselves physically.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for Black people, it's not something that we were taught to do. We were
Mm.
taught to work it away, to drink it away, to party it away. And all we do is just mask the pain, and it just gets smothered and smothered because we can't
Mm-hmm.
escape our experiences. But I do believe that we think we're escaping our experiences by not thinking
In
about
the
it
moment.
in the moment. But how could you not think about something you experience? When you start to really analyze it, it doesn't make any sense.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
So, in your work, you refer to the inner child. Can you tell
Mhm.
us a little more about that, and what is that?
Yeah, great question. You know, as babies, what happens when babies crawl? Do they like get scared and don't try to get up, or do they keep going? They're gonna keep going, right?
Right.
And so that's the way we start off. We start off as a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, things happen in life, some things that were not in our control, a lot of things, especially when we're children. And if there's not conversations happening around it, our system is holding on to those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime that emotion comes up that happened at 12, if I'm 35 and that emotion comes again, my inner child comes crawling out. And unfortunately, that may be the lens that I'm looking at life under if I haven't taken time to reconcile with what has happened in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk about the inner child, I talk about basically because our experiences are a part of who we are. And a lot of the dysfunction
Right.
and the traumatic things that
Mm-hmm.
happened took place where we didn't even have language to express it.
Right.
And so, like, my goal is to just help people work on their healing process through reconciling with what has happened, because you can't change it. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing about the past. I always say, like, how can I like be okay with everything that's happened? And the
Yes.
reality is, like, I can't change it. I can sit in it. We can
Mm-hmm.
choose to sit in it, or we can choose to heal and try to have a different outlook on our future. And you can't do that when your inner child is controlling the narrative.
Mm-hmm. So, can you give us an example of how our inner child affects the way we think, feel,
Yeah.
and, act on a daily basis?
We could just talk about some people who may have had their dad not around.
Mm.
So that right away there's abandonment. Let's say the dad was in and out, very sporadic. There was no consistency. So, mom did the best that she could and tried the best that she could to take care of the child, but the child is missing that father figure. The child is seeing the dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody may not be having conversations about the dysfunction, so the child may be internalizing there must be something wrong with me while
Right.
why he's not showing up.
Mm-hmm.
So that child becomes an adult, gets into a relationship. Their partner may go away for the weekend, and because that partner is leaving, that inner child comes out and it starts to say, oh my gosh, you're about to get abandoned again.
Mm-hmm.
But you're technically not being abandoned because your partner told you they were going to go away that weekend.
Right.
But what unfortunately what happens, and this shows up a lot in relationships because it's
Mm.
the most like close relationship you'll have with somebody.
Yeah.
What happens is, instead of you saying like, oh, this feels familiar, and challenging that thought, if you're not in tune with your emotions and your inner child and your
Mm-hmm.
wounds, what you're going to do is you may spaz out and say, why you're leaving me? You said you would never leave me. And the partner's confused. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a like kind of a scenario, a real scenario that happens where people's inner child wounds may look familiar to what's happening in front of them, because the body keeps the score. Our mind does not have concept of time. It does not know we're in 2022. When that
Mm.
emotion comes into play, it's like, oh my gosh, we're 12
Wow.
again. I need to protect you. And
Yeah.
so it does what it's supposed to do. But then I have to get in touch with my mind and tell my mind that no, it's okay. Like, this is different.
Mm-hmm.
My partner's here for me. There's no issue here. They're not abandoning me. This is something that I'm grieving of, like not having my
Mm-hmm.
dad around. Does that make sense?
Yes, you also mentioned earlier that you had your moments when you had to seek therapy yourself.
Mhm.
How have that worked for you? And if anything ever comes back up in your daily life or as you go, how are you dealing with that?
That's such a good question, because it's not like you go to therapy and then like life is like perfect.
Right.
Even with my clients, a lot. I do a lot of shifting their thought process, helping them with that. And so when they start making connections, I get so excited. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, you didn't hit the lottery, you didn't get a new house. I was like, but you're shifting your thought
Mm-hmm.
process, your perspective is different. And they're like, wow, you're right. Because a lot of
Yeah.
times, especially in America, we think that our happiness and peace is connected to what we have, which is why we have
Mm.
Amazons on every block. And that's just not
Mm.
the case.
Okay.
So for me, I went to therapy, and every single day I take my medicine. I go for my hike. I listen to music. I check in with myself. That's my medicine for living. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I learned the formula. So it's not like I go to therapy and things never come up. Things absolutely come up,
Right.
but it doesn't, I don't give it an open door policy where it can marinate. It may knock on
Mm-hmm.
my door and I notice it, but then I'm reframing it in the moment. Like,
Right.
that's through all the work that I've done before. It was like the door was open, the thoughts was like chilling inside of me, and it just like controlled the narrative of my life. It
Mm-hmm.
no longer controls the narrative of my life, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't come up, because I'm
Right.
human. It was an experience that I've
Mm-hmm.
had.
Mm-hmm.
So I can never like get over the experiences, but I don't have to let the experiences affect my lens on my future.
Yeah, so you have literally have the tools to help you through
Yes.
those moments. I've looked at your a lot of your walks when you're doing your walks and you're
Yeah.
talking, and I really like that because I think having those moments and with your thoughts and just you're taking care of yourself, and
Right.
that mental thought, they're all coming together. You're
Yes.
taking care of yourself and helping people in the same moment, and I just really like that about you.
Oh, thank
You
you.
talked earlier about, oh, I'm not really a Bible person. Let me tell you, one of the things that I have noticed in all of the episodes that I have done on this podcast, there isn't a single person that haven't mentioned that spiritual side, because it is connected with
It
us in
is.
some way. When you talk about the inner child, I think when we go back and we have to deal with those things, our spiritual side also help us to get over those things. So I really admire when people come on and they don't shy away from the spiritual side, because I think it's a big part of who we are. And some people may not believe, but I absolutely believe our spiritual side is there to really help guide us through some of the things that we are going through on a daily basis. So I want to get into some of the things that may be happening to us as a Black race community. Specifically for Black folks, we live in a world where the deck is stacked against us, where
Mhm.
systemic racism is rampant and we're being treated differently daily. How
Mhm.
can healing our inner child help us in this world right now?
That's a good question. I I want to say quickly about the Bible thing, because I grew up in church, and
Mhm.
I deal with a lot of people who've had a lot of church hurt, and a lot. Somebody wrote me one time and said, "You talk a lot about the way you talk is what's in the Bible, but you never mention the Bible." It's not that I don't believe in the Bible, or I
Mhm.
don't think the Bible is real. It's more so I want to still be able to connect with people
To
without
connect
that
with
feeling
everyone.
like a
Right.
barrier.
Mhm.
But I still give the message. I feel like God still uses me to give
Mhm.
messages
Mhm.
to people in ways that I can never understand.
Mhm.
Um, when I think about the systems, and I always say I'm so glad I didn't know there was systemic racism growing up, because I don't know if I would have kept going. I probably would have felt like, oh my gosh, can I even do this? I honestly like felt like I had a blinder on. I didn't understand systemic racism until college.
Where did you grow up?
Uh, in Roxbury, but
Are you
but
kidding me?
when you grow up around people that look like you in the same like hood, it's like
Okay.
I had no idea. I
Mm-hmm.
just thought life was a struggle. So the more I've learned about it, the more angry I get about like
Yeah.
it's how much unfair it is.
When you say you didn't know about it, you mean there wasn't a name for it at the time, or you just thought of the struggle, or people didn't talk about
That
in
the
those
name
terms?
wasn't there. It was just like it just felt like black people like just didn't have much. The
Mm-hmm.
only like people that had things were on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I grew up in the hood, and single parent household. And so obviously like, you before social media, because this is before social media, everyone looked like you in the same
Yeah, yeah,
neighborhood.
yeah.
They was in the same socioeconomic
Mm-hmm.
status as you.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's, part of like why I didn't really understand. We didn't have the
Yeah.
internet. I had the newspaper. Obviously now like the kids today could they will all, they're gonna know. They see it
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Yes.
So I didn't know that, and I'm happy I didn't know.
Mm.
For people that know, even as we're talking about the inner child, like what has happened to you, like let's say you had some trauma, was not your fault. But when I think about like being an adult and like living life, it's your responsibility to be okay. When I think about systemic racism and the cards stacked against us,
Mm.
it's not our fault that things are
Right.
like this,
Mm-hmm.
but it's my responsibility to be okay. And so even as I talk on social media, I talk a lot about free things that people can do in the moment, because I do recognize there is a financial barrier to access to certain things that would help us get
Absolutely.
along.
Yeah.
So for people listening, yes, the cards are stacked against you, but use what you have and start where you are.
Mm.
And for me, like that sometimes is it YouTube, is it listening to something, right? Because everybody, people say like, go get a therapist. Everybody doesn't have insurance, everybody can't afford a
Okay.
therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the realities of the life we live in, as people are telling you to take care of yourself. I
Yeah.
recognize like it's not as simple, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't want you to look at that as a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So, can you help us understand um, where the inner child work and self-awareness can play a role in making that person's life better?
Oh, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the understanding your inner child and
Mm-hmm.
understanding how it affects you, you
Mm-hmm.
become more self-aware of what's happening in front of you in your
Mm-hmm.
relationship, at work, your goals. Sometimes the goals are something that
Mm-hmm.
people struggle with completing, and without that awareness, you cannot live a life that was designed for you. I think
Mm-hmm.
we make agreements with, we make these what's the word Les Brown says, we make settlements. You know how you make an out of court settlement?
You're right.
Like, okay, we make a settlement on life and be like, okay, this is just my life, like, and it's like, no, this is not what
You don't
we
have
were
to
designed to
accept
live.
it, right?
Yeah, you don't have
Yes.
to accept it, but without understanding who you are, what you've been through, the things you've
Mm.
struggled with, you won't be able to see yourself. It's kind of like if you had glasses on that were pink, and you telling me that the sky's pink, and I'm like, no,
Mm-hmm.
it's blue, and you're like, no, it's pink, because you really see the pink sky. You don't see what it really is.
Yeah.
That's the way it is with our
Mm-hmm.
life. We don't get to see who we are really are, what we can accomplish,
Yeah.
because we're living in the past.
Yeah. So, there's so many things happening in the workplace today. People are quitting, people are making decisions about work-life balance and looking at companies and seeing how that company's goal measure up with what they're looking for. And people feel like they have leverage right now. So for someone who's listening and is experiencing an unhealthy situation at work that is bringing stress and a sense of unfairness, what would you say to that person?
So obviously, like, we can't just quit right away.
Mm-hmm.
evaluate the situation to see if you're doing everything you could do to advocate for yourself. This is a real thing, especially for Black people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of underlining things that take place, and sometimes we are not
Yeah.
used to speaking up for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, look at the protocols, look at what you can do, look at your self-care routine. Are you taking work home emotionally, literally,
Yeah.
trying to keep up and build up? Sometimes we try to put ourselves at a higher standard because we don't feel like we deserve it. Imposter syndrome kicks in. And it's like, no, this is, you deserve to be here. Like, so like looking at the full picture, what you have control over. Because
Yes.
unfortunately, what happens is like something happens, and if we don't reconcile with it, our brain starts to look for evidence that will continue to like place us in a victim role. And
Mm.
we may not see our power. Inner child work, if we have been victims growing up and we haven't reconciled with it, all areas of our life will feel like a victim. We won't
Wow.
see where we can
Mm-hmm.
gain control. So you do that work. Let's say you do that work. Maybe the goal, maybe the next thing is like, this isn't the best situation for me. Like, I need to look for another job. The goal
Yeah.
is to have a plan or a system to deal with it. And even though you're looking for another job, you won't feel as bad being there because you have a plan to leave,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So like it's all about like, can I, like, is this something that like I can like I can work through, where I'm able to talk to HR, where I'm able to like leave work here, where I'm able to like, you know what, we don't have to be friends, we're just co-workers. Like
Right.
looking at your power.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem with like not reconciling with your inner child. You don't see your power.
Because sometimes we don't even know we have power, and we do.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
dealing with the inner child is definitely going to help you to uncover some of those things that you never recognized before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in therapy today.
Why does everybody say that when they meet with me? It's so
You,
crazy.
you
That
know
is so
something that I'm
profound.
recognizing about you, and I don't know if this is reminiscent of most therapists, but your tone, your voice, your presentation, the pace,
Oh,
everything just sets a tone for ready to talk. So I think
thank
that's what the feeling is. So take it in a good way.
you. No, it's good. No, it's fine. I'm glad.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So how does someone know if they're a good candidate for therapy? Because in the Black community we have reservations about things like that.
Well, I think everybody should. I mean, it's so I don't want to say everybody should try therapy because therapy is not the only tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like you want to try therapy, especially if you're struggling with seeing things, if you're feeling like a
Mm-hmm.
victim, it's important to get a outside view. I'm in the picture, I can't see it clearly. You're looking at the picture as a therapist, you
Mm-hmm.
can see it a lot clearly, so it can help. Right. But
Mm-hmm.
again, therapists are human. Sometimes people have had bad experiences.
Yes.
But yeah, I think, when you're ready, because people have come to me, they weren't ready to look at the full picture and they was offended and they left. That happens rare now because I think people that come to see me, they see my platform and how I operate. So they have a
Mm-hmm.
good sense on how I am.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I can't just sit and let you like not take responsibility or accountability for your life.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So my style is different. Like, everybody's style is different. But if
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you want to try therapy, there's no bad time to like start.
Right. I'm laughing because I'm looking at you. You look so youthful, but you have
Thank you.
such vast knowledge, and I really appreciate that
Thank you.
about you. What is one thing you hope Black folks will take away from this conversation and your work in the mental health field?
So you have power, right? Like
Mm,
regardless of what has happened, broken crayons still color. That was my struggle, is that like I didn't
mm.
feel like I had power or control
Wow.
over my life.
Can you say that
Yeah.
again? Broken crayon?
Broken crayons still color. You remember, like, kids don't color anymore like that, but when they broke, it's like you have to maneuver it a little differently, but the
Yeah,
value is still there.
that is so
Um,
profound.
I didn't
Yeah.
make that up. I found that quote somewhere, but it's still good. I'm gonna still say it because it's like it's
Yes,
powerful. Analogies have helped me a
it
lot. I use
is.
analogies all the
Yeah.
time because it really resonates for people.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to know, broken crayons still color. I want you to know when you're hungry, you go to the refrigerator, and when your spirit's hungry, like you were talking about the spirit, like regardless of if you're religious or not, because that's not
Mm-hmm.
what the spiritual is. It's like being able to understand your power. You got to be in touch with your inner spirit. And if you're just
Absolutely.
on your phone, if you're working all the time, if you're escaping, you're not going to understand what you need. I
Mm-hmm.
want you to understand that. I want you to lean into that hard emotion that may feel hard. Know that your body's trying to give you signs. Our body gives us signs all the time.
Right.
We just ignore them. And the last thing I want to say is that fault and responsibility are two different things. Whether we're talking about systems or whether we're talking about your childhood, if you were in a system that was not your fault, that's okay. We can name that, but we can also name the fact that if you want change in life, it's your
Mm-hmm.
responsibility to do the work. Start where you are and use what you have.
Yeah. So one thing I want to ask you, because it's something that I'm curious about, and I think I may have some of that information, but I want to hear it and also would like the audience to understand that as well. How do you decompress after working with your clients or
Yeah.
patients? Because sometimes you deal with some really heavy stuff. Do you have a therapist that you have to go to
Yeah.
after you have those sessions with some of your clients?
So I don't have a therapist currently. I've had a therapist in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I want people to know therapy is not the only tool. I talk about medicine. I take my medicine. Medicine is not always pharmaceutical.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way, like my food I eat. What am I eating? Sometimes I'm
Yeah.
having a burger. Sometimes I'm
Mm-hmm.
having a green smoothie. That's better for my system, right?
Right.
So I have really good healthy systems where they're motivational videos. I listen. Les Brown's my favorite person.
Mm.
I can listen to him every day. I love walking. I love music. I have to move my body. I know if I'm not, if your blood doesn't move, you can die. If your thoughts don't move, you feel like you're dying inside. They're
Yeah.
so stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
So moving my body helps, which is why like I have these impromptu videos in the woods, is because that's when I get the
I
most
love them.
clarity. I get so much clarity in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I take care of I do practice what I preach, or I could not do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really big on making sure I have 4 kids. I'm married. I've been married almost 14 years.
Wow.
I have a practice, the podcast. I do a lot of things, but I don't feel overwhelmed because I'm really balanced, and I create
Mm.
these systems to say, Celeste, what did you do for yourself today? I'm
Mm-hmm.
big on that. I'm so big on that.
Wow, that's incredible stuff. So how can people find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, so if you just go to celestethetherapist.com, you can find like links to everything.
Mhm. Absolutely. What is one thing about you that people may be surprised about?
That I was in the military. I joined at 17. My last 2 years of high school was in Georgia, and I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. So
Mm-hmm.
I joined the military, and I recognized that the military was not for me, and I went to college. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow. You were
I
in
did
so
6 years.
6 years in the military?
National Guard, yeah. And
Where did you
I
serve?
I'll no, so it was National Guard, so a week in a month, 2 weeks a year.
Okay.
But boot camp was so hard because I wasn't a
You
sports
survived.
person. I survived, but it showed me, like, when I'm in the gym and I feel like giving up, I'm like, no, you can do it. So
Yeah.
it was a good experience.
Absolutely. Well, Celeste, you've been great. And I hope at some
Thank
point we can
you.
come back and talk about something more specific. But I like your energy. I like the way you
Thank
put
you.
me at ease even while I'm having this conversation with you. And I hope folks can take away some of the golden nuggets that you left with us today. And
Thank you.
congratulations on your, did you say 300 thousand downloads? I saw
Yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
recently.
yeah.
So
Thank
congratulations on
you.
that.
Thank
People are
you.
definitely listening to you. And I want to just say to continue to do what you're doing to serve our people and continue to educate us on doing things that can help us to get over our inner child.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
It was a joy having you. Thank you so much.